Good morning. Welcome to the Pharmaceutical Science and Drug Information Subcommittee joint meeting. So we're going to go ahead and start. I'll just introduce myself. I'm Su-Fan Wong. I'm the chair of the Pharmaceutical Science Committee. And my partner is?
Hi there, I'm Andrew Smith. I'm a pharmacist at the University of Michigan, and I serve as the chair of the Drug Information Subcommittee.
Okay, so we also have about 10 people on the Zoom. So we will try to be inclusive and interface with them also. So to start with, I think some of you have the agenda. Oh, there we go. All right. So this is to start with agenda. The first thing, this is pretty standard that we have it structured for our committee meeting. So actually, I have to take it back. We no longer have a minute because of the hybrid. So I'm going to skip the first one with the approval. So we do have a new member to introduce, and I'm going to ask her to stand up. And if you can go to the microphone and introduce yourself, sorry.
Hi, my name is Safa Shoraishi. I'm the pharmacy research manager at SWOGCancerResearch. We're located in Northern Virginia. It's a community-based hospital. It's a growing community-based hospital. I am happy to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you and welcome. And then I also wanted to inform Michelle Yu, who actually came from our residency program. And then she recently has an affiliation change. So she moved from Wisconsin. Now she's at University of Chicago. Unfortunately, she can't attend this meeting, but we hope to see her in the future meetings. So next is the some update. Okay, I should not be looking at slides then. One of the first item has to do with the Drug Information Initiative report. For those of you who had not attended our previous meeting, this has been an ongoing initiative. We recognize that particularly with the increased use of oral agents, drug interaction become a more clinically significant issue. So throughout the process, as we were looking for ways to improve for better screening of patients as well as better monitoring of patients when they and after they enrolled on the protocol. And we look for mechanism to improve this aspect. And the most recent initiative that we work on is we were able to identify a commercial vendor who's interested in creating a portion of the drug interaction platform to address for particularly non-commercially available drugs. So at this point, we have involved SWOG into our planning and development process. There's been some requests for collecting some pilot study data to support the feasibility of the use of this platform. I believe Dan has completed that, and actually there's been a publication came out of that. The next step what he has done is to develop a multi-center study. Unfortunately, based on the most recent email that he sent me, that study does not look like it will move forward. So we are probably going to regroup and to think about if there are other ways of doing that. That study is actually coordinated through the CCBC committee. So we're continue to work on that because we really feel that this will be a very helpful platform for site investigators. Particularly, we have such a diverse group of investigator site. Not all of them are in academic centers. Some of them has less resource than others also. So because of that, we feel the need that we should take care of all the sites, no matter what level they're at. And also drug interaction, if we don't address that, it can potentially affect the outcome of the study. So it is very important and it's very critical. So being as the pharmacist group within SWOG, we wish to take the leadership in making this happen. So we will continue to work on that. I also want to encourage that most of the study done so far are primarily in academic center. So particularly if you're at a community setting, or if you're at even the setting which is more like rural without a lot of resource support, we also would like to hear from you if you can and are interested. Please let us know, and maybe we can support and work with you to see how we can collect more feasibility data so that we can move this forward to maybe bring this platform on board at some point also. And your help will be very important for us to move this forward. So I don't know if anybody here or on the Zoom has any question. Oh, by the way, just as a reminder, sorry, I forgot. For the people attending on Zoom, the recommendation is for you to unmute and also turn off your camera. If you have any questions, put it on your chat if you can, because we can't see you raising your hands. And if you wish to speak, the easiest thing also is to put on your chat to say that you wanted to speak, and then we will call on you. And that would be the easiest way now. Of course, you can also try to unmute your microphone and speak as well. Most likely that will work also, but that is the second level of recommendation. So does anybody have any feedback or recommendations or ideas about the drug interactions? Okay, and I don't see anything on the, okay, so let me move on to the next one, which is the recent NCI, the Advanced Practice Provider, or in short, we call it APP, for authorizing non-physician providers to write and chemo orders, etc., and be more expand their roles in conduction of clinical trials. And this is in an effort to also hope to improve recruitment to clinical trials as well. So within SWOG, a task force has been formed, and the inaugural task force meeting occurred at this meeting 2 days ago. And so so I just wanted to, oh, there we go. So for the APP task force, so this is the initial goal of the task force set is to identify barriers limiting the APPE practice within SWOG, and then also how we can integrate APPs within the SWOG organization as well as the clinical trials, and also provide education for all levels of APPs to support them for the functioning on a daily basis. So as you can see, the member of the task force really composed of multidisciplinary members, and I'm one of them in there, and I hope that eventually we'll be able to bring on more pharmacy representation. But we do have primarily the membership right now is nurses. But I will tell you that I don't feel that I am a different profession when I was going through the task force meeting. So I feel very positive about the direction that the task force is going. And we also have physicians and PAs on this. And we also do a conference call every 2 months or sometimes monthly. It depends on the agenda. So if any of you are interested, please let me know. And within the APP, it was interesting. I just wanted to report out that we talk about education at this point. There's been already educational modules being developed by the APP task force, and they are on the LMS system as SWOG. So eventually it will get rolled out, will be an official teaching module, or I should say educational module that people can take in, and so that they can be qualified as APP at their site. No matter what profession you're in, the expectation is one has to go through the entire learning. This, if I recall correctly, there's about 8 or 9 modules on there right now. And each of the module actually address the different stages of clinical trial conduction, etc. So I think it would be good. And part of it is also, I personally get asked by NCI of how we can get pharmacists to be more involved in APP. There was a survey done. There was some pharmacy participant in the survey, but it was a very small portion of that. And I think currently, I think the most active professional in this APP process is our nurses. So for pharmacists, I actually share some of my personal perspective about some of the barriers for our profession. And part of the reason is because each state has different laws for pharmacy practice. So currently we do have an initiative within our pharmacy profession that there are what they call advanced provider, which people can qualify, but they have to apply through the state board. But only 7 state boards in the US have this allow the pharmacists to be able to apply for the advanced provider status. I know that the momentum is going national, but I do not know when that's going to occur. But I do hope that now this APP initiative may be something that will help to accelerate the process. So if I may, I also want to introduce somebody that I get to meet at this meeting, Stephen Bartlett. He is the liaison representative from the whole VA system to SWOG. So I was very thrilled when he was introduced on, I think, by SWOG as the representative. I said, whoa, there's a pharmacist representing the whole VA system as SWOG. So I finally got a chance to meet Stephen and get to talk to him about that. And one of the topics that we talk about has to do with the APP. The advantage, part of the reason is we are talking about, because the VA system pharmacists, they don't go by the state regulation, they go by the federal regulation. So consequence to that, I think historically, even beyond clinical trials, the practice of a lot of the VA pharmacists has been much more independent than many of us can do beyond the VA system. So we talk about the APP, so we figure this the VA pharmacist may be a good model to start with. So we are going to work on some of the potential opportunities. And once when we get a more solid plan, I hope to report it back to all of you at the next meeting. And we're also collaborating with other professional organizations as well to see what we can do. And it will be including maybe establishing good practice model, measuring outcome, as well as creating even more educational modules to, in addition, or I should say complement, and maybe we can integrate both the current educational module created by the APP task force at SWOG and put in and review that. So that's part of the plan, is we're going to review those educational module and see from the pharmacy perspective what we can contribute. I'm one of the, my personal philosophy is I don't like to create different modules. So my goal is to hope that we can work the content into the existing module, so that, because the intention of this module is to be taken independent of your professional background anyway. So that's what we hope to do. But in addition to that, we will be actually starting to educate the pharmacists at the VA and maybe recruit selected sites to be able to do some pilot program and see how it works out and create some practice model. And then we can share that as well. So that is kind of the plan. Stephen, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, it's still all kind of new to me, so I will,
But if I may, would you mind to come up to the microphone and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your role as the liaison?
sure, I'm Steve Bartlett. I work at the Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center. It's in Aurora, but it's kind of the Denver metro area. I was brought on by Dr. Blanky a number of years ago to chair the VA working group. And then a couple of years ago, we actually became a full committee, which is kind of a big advance for us. So, yeah, and being a pharmacist is kind of a different role for a committee chair, you know, in kind of a non-strictly pharmaceutical setting. So, I run the investigational drug section at my medical center, and I also chair 2 different IRBs at the university and the VA Central IRB nationally. So have way too many hats, too many balls in the air. And I think you all have the same problems. And it was good to meet you yesterday, and we'll start working on, you know, all these efforts. I know the VA pharmacist community, you know, like probably every place we have kind of 2 pathways for pharmacists. You have those real go-getters that want to do everything, which is probably everybody in this room. And then there's all the other folks at home that punch in at 9 or 8 o'clock and punch out at 4:30 and then they're done. But we're looking for that go-getter group that can really move things along. And we have a lot of those in VA, because VA is a great place to practice pharmacy. You don't have some of the same issues you do in the university setting or the private care setting, because there's can be a lot more autonomy, and we already have that in some situations. So.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to open up the platform to any of the attendees in person as well as virtual. If there's any question, comments, suggestions, etc. Very quiet group. Either we need to schedule the meeting earlier or later. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I realized that I have skipped a couple of things. One is actually, I always want to make sure I show the current committee member roster and make sure I didn't miss anybody. Or if anybody know of people on that roster that we need to make any adjustment, etc. So just please let me know. I have emailed this list out to our membership list. But if some of you who did not get to receive this list and have any recommendation for adjustment, let me know. If you have the list, you can also email the adjustment to me. Whatever works better. I also want to acknowledge that we have been missing Rivka's name, who's a longstanding, very supportive and active member of the committee for the last 2 meetings. And I finally get to fix that. So she's officially back on now. And we also changed Michelle's affiliation as well, Michelle Yu. So. Oh, okay. Rivka, I see that you are on, so I did my job this time. All right, so without further changes, I'm going to move on, and I talk about the Drug Interaction Initiative by Danvers already. So just to let everybody know, now our 6-year grant cycle is coming to the end. And so we start planning on the next cycle of grant application. The pharmacy committee also have report that we contribute to the grant application also. So basically right now I am asking some of the people who are taking some leadership role within the committee to work with me. But I will also be including broadening up the involvement of other members as we move along so that you get a chance to review the application as well that our committee is going to send in, and I will continue to seek your input and advice on that. So this next item is something that has been probably on this for a few years. As some of you may know, I am the founding committee chair of this committee from 1994. It's not right for me to still be sitting here talking. I have made attempts to transition the leadership role to members, but the unfortunate part is I have gone through 3 individuals, but when they were very close to getting ready to take on, and then there was a change of position or responsibility, so then I have to look for another individual to start from scratch again. So on top of that, I'm totally violating I should not be publicly acknowledging that, the SWOG policy for leadership role in terms of terms. But I think Dr. Blanke is fully aware of the struggle that I've been experiencing, or the challenges. So he has basically not kicked me off the podium yet. But I do want to really develop, because that is part of the mission of the whole SWOG organization, is to foster upcoming leaders. So if any one of you are interested, please let me know. I commit myself to you for as much time as you need to acclimate to that role. And at some point, even if I ask you to take on the role and I step off, I will remain active, because many of you know that I'm a troublemaker. So usually I have a lot of ongoing projects that I would like to continue to be involved and contribute and support for people to move it forward. So please don't be shy. And don't hesitate. It's not that hard to do. Yes, it takes a little bit of time to learn about SWOG, but my commitment to support the transition, I hope that will give you levels of confidence to come up and volunteer yourself also. So I really hope that I will get an email soon. I don't think people here not that they won't do it, but I don't think they're brave enough to go up to the podium and say, I want to do it. But I will wait for your emails as well. So, all right. So I think this completes the first section. So I'm going to hand over the next section to the chair of the Drug Information Subcommittee, Chair Andrew.
Thank you, Swan. Going to advance to the next slide. Thank you. So I just wanted to provide a quick update on the number of drug sections that we've completed in the last 6 months since our meeting in October. So we've had 6 new drug sections. You'll see one protocol in particular, S2306, has been a lot of work over the past few months. It is navitoclax plus or minus, or chemotherapy plus or minus navitoclax in ALL and lymphoma. So it's involved 10 drug sections so far and counting. Again, we've had 6 new sections and then plus 8 updates. So I just want to take a moment to thank everybody that has helped with write all of those sections. I know we've been competing with like spring break and COVID and vacation and teaching and all those responsibilities, but every time I send an email to the committee, no one says no. So I really appreciate everybody's help to make that a success and to get all of those sections completed. And then I also just wanted to take a moment to recognize our learners that we've had over the past year. We've had V from Hopkins, who is the PGY2 investigational drug and research resident there. And as a next step, she'll be going to Indiana University as an IDS pharmacist this summer. We've also had the Chapman Amden Fellow Elaine, who helped write in sections in the fall, and she will be transitioning to her second year fellowship this summer. And then Lauren is the PGY2 resident at the University of Michigan, and we're happy that she'll be staying at U of M. So then this summer we'll have the new class of learners join. And I think this year we'll be inviting the PGY2 resident at UC Davis to also help write. So this summer we'll have a teaching session to go over how to write those drug sections. So I can send out that invitation to the larger committee if you would like to attend, just as a refresher or to be familiar with the writing process. But again, thank you to everybody that helps to write those sections. It really helps to make a lot of work a lot lighter. So, thank you.
So, do you want to talk about usually the process?
Sure. So to just provide an overview of the process, we generally receive a request from the SWOG office to write a drug section, and it's either a brand new section, so one that we don't have a section for, or it might just be an update. So maybe there's a new investigator's brochure release, or the drug went to market and we now have a package insert. So that comes to me, and then I look for an available writer. We usually try to have our learners do the majority of the writing, since that's the bulk of the work, and it's a good learning opportunity for them in their training. So they spend maybe 2 to 3 weeks writing that drug section, and then we have a committee member serve as the reviewer. So that's a pharmacist with more experience who just provides a critical lens on that document and just reviews for accuracy and for clarity. And then it gets sent back to me, and I do a quick once over, and then send it on to the SWOG office.
And this is part of the pharmacist liaison to the disease committee. Those are the first people that that Andrew will approach. And then if they are already occupied, then we tap into the more general committee membership also. And I would just also say that this is a program that we started a few years ago, because many well, I shouldn't say many, but all of our members are actually volunteer. And so they all are very occupied with their employed position. So this is a way for us to create a learning experience for the people, the trainees, the resident and the fellow pharmacists, and then allow the practicing pharmacists to serve as a reviewer. So, and the program has been quite successful, I would say, because, for example, both Michelle and Andrew, the inaugural residents from that program, and both of them stay on as members. So that was exactly what I was hoping to accomplish when the idea was developed. And so this is, I don't know, the third group now. So, and we have gotten very positive feedback from the program directors of the residency program, that they felt that this is also something that enrich their training program as well. So, and of course, you can see that we are also expanding the number of writers as well. And Andrew, I understand you saying that there may be 2 additional programs that we can reach out to.
Yes, so the number of PGY2 investigational drug and research programs is growing. When I was a resident, we only had 2 programs, but now I believe we're up to 9 or 10 programs. So I would like to reach out to those programs that are at SWOG institutions and try to invite those residents to be a part of the writing process.
Yeah, so maybe that's also another opportunity for the APP initiative as well, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
That's
all I have.
Oh, okay. Do you want to continue to read? Oh, so the next agenda item is protocol review activities. I know Holly is there. I don't know if George is, but Holly, can you let us know if you have received any requests for reviewing protocols? You can either type in to let us know that you want to talk, or you can just go ahead and unmute your microphone on your computer.
Oh, hi, Sufan. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
No, I have not received a recent request to review protocols.
Okay, and I don't know if George is on. Is he George? Doesn't look like it. Huh? Okay, so Holly, I'm not surprised because even for me, sometimes I do work with those rapid review protocols. They usually engage me like when they start all those weekly phone calls. And even for that, I have been missed out in some of the version review of the protocols also. I did bring it to the attention of the operation office, and I hope that they will continue to remind the clinical, what do you call the protocol coordinators to remind them to make sure to add the pharmacist to the email list for review. And again, this is another responsibility of the pharmacist liaison for each of the disease committee also. We actually created a reviewed template. So to kind of create a more consistency when we ask our members to review the protocol so that the operation office know what they can expect as well. It seems like the activities has dwindled down the last couple of years. But at the same token, we also realized that the operation office has experienced a huge impact from COVID and for other reasons that they have a lot of new protocol coordinator in the operation office at this moment. So I'm sure that part of it is also resulting from training the new people. So I will continue to remind them. So hopefully we'll be able to get our liaison back. I also want to take this moment to ask those of you who have signed up as disease committee pharmacist liaison, if you don't hesitate to send an email to either your respective disease committee coordinator at the office, as well as your committee chair, to inform them of your availability and your willingness to review protocols also. For the ones that I have an opportunity to get involved in, I would tell you that they do appreciate that. And I also feel that the input that we provide is often very much needed and valued. So I highly encourage all of you to do that. Again, don't be shy. And I think, most of the committee chair are very aware of what the pharmacy committee or the pharmaceutical science committee has contributed to this organization also. So please do that. And I see Crystal came in. So Crystal, I think part of what we're talking about is, again, this meeting, the protocol review, triage members of our committee inform us that they have received 0 protocol review. So if you can help us also to remind the protocol coordinators in the operation office to add the liaison on the email list for protocol review, it would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, the next one is Aurora update. Is Matt on the? No, okay. So I guess Matt couldn't attend the meeting either. So I do know is phase 1 of the Aurora had rolled out a while back. So let me just take a pause here and just ask, at the time, at the last meeting, we have asked people if there's been any problem, and I also asked SWOG to see if they have received any concern reported to them, and there wasn't any. But phase 1 is the simple process of it. It's just essentially changing the link address that we use to order drug. So I just wanted to pause and ask and take the opportunity to ask people attending, particularly if you have your hands-on using Aurora, is there anything that you would like to share? And if you do, if you're attending in person, go up to the microphone. If you are attending virtual, just unmute and you can speak.
So no issues with phase one. It's just a different ordering system. Basically, it's very easy to use. I think the concern would be once they roll out phase two.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Joyce from UC Davis. Yeah, phase one, it was pretty easy and smooth, so we didn't really encounter any issues because it's for drug ordering and just, I think as most of us know, then in order to use Aurora, everybody has to sort of register through the NCI, through the using the ID.me registration. And because our site, only the IDS staff will be doing the ordering. So we all kind of familiar with the system and have everything. Again, the same concern is for the phase two that we will still working on it. So.
All right. So that was a good lead in. And Andrew, no problem at Michigan either, right?
No, a very similar experience. I think it's just been a change of platform, but all has gone well for phase one at our institution.
So of course, the typical concerning part has always been the phase two of the Aurora program. So I was hoping Matt can join us to give us an update. I know that there's been a delay in the rollout of two and the phase two, and I was hoping Matt can give us an update. And I don't think I got anything in the email either. So I don't know when phase two will be officially rolled out. But certainly, I think all of us who are pharmacists in the audience already and in practice, all of us has heard enough about the concern. And so I just wanted to share with you some of the things. So actually, all the Alliance Pharmaceutical, or I should say just general pharmacy committee chairs, we do a Zoom call every 3 months. So this Aurora phase two concern has been one of the topic. Actually, it's one of the high priority topics that we talk about at the call. And so at the most recent call, then we hear that letters has been sent by multiple professional organizations to NCI expressing their concern of the phase two Aurora. Essentially, I think one of the major concern is the inability of Aurora to talk to the commercial program that many of the sites are already currently using. And in order for this two program to coexist, that asks the investigational drug handlers that they have to actually do a lot of duplication of data entry in both systems. And now, I don't know the detail because I don't have the firsthand information. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew to help us kind of facilitate this. And also maybe I do know that some of you attending in person also have some personal concern as well. But before I put Andrew on the spot, I also just want to share. So as far as we know, letter has been sent from ADCC, which is also very much overlap with pharmacy representation in NCCN, HOPA, which is the Hema Pharmacy Association, and then from the VA system, as well as from UCOP. So what we hear is letter was sent and they have received response from, most of them has received response from NCI, except that there wasn't just as an informational, but not much of addressing the issue that was brought up in the letter. I actually understand that the VA group has an opportunity to meet with NCI, and that's what I heard after I talked to you, Stephen. And my understanding is, again, they said NCI listened But the feedback, again, has nothing to do with modifying the Aurora system to address the issue also. What we hear is that there has been very minimal communication between the commercial vendor and NCI. So this is something that I think we may want to help to resolve also. I have collected all the letters that have been sent by all the different organizations. So I just received all this, and even the latest one I received while I was at the meeting here. So when I get home, I will review them in detail. And the next plan is I hope to, I will report also back to the Alliance group, and then we will probably ask all the representatives from the various group to come to a Zoom call, so that we can talk about it in more detail and get everybody on the same page for a proposed action plan. I would say that I feel very fortunate during that Alliance call that SWOG, actually our group chair, Dr. Blanky, has supported us, that he actually took the initiative with the information that Joyce and I provided to him at one of our committee meeting. And he expressed that and sent a correspondent to NCI. We did get a reply, but I have a sense that the reply that we received was not hugely different from what the other group has received also. And what they replied, I don't feel that has addressed the issue that was brought up from this side specifically also. So this remain to be something that we would like to improve on. So with that, Andrew, would you mind to guide us through some of the concerns that how the coexistence of Aurora 2 and the commercial program may create?
Sure. I think probably the best emotion that I've heard is, or felt, is just angst. I think we don't know the full scope of what phase 2 will entail. We roughly know that it will involve drug accountability, but to what degree? So that raises a lot of concerns in IDS practitioners' minds of, we already do that to an extent in our own systems. We have a process for maintaining drug accountability. So then how does this new system figure into that picture? We're comfortable using industry IRT systems, and we have, that's part of our day-to-day work, but how does this new system, where it's loosely said that drug accountability will need to be performed in there in real time, how does that factor into our workflow?
If I may, so part of the response that we received back from this concern that we raised is that NCI said that it's because they get audited by the FDA also. And that's why they created this program to fulfill the requirement of the FDA audit. Now, I don't know what the FDA audit requirements are. I don't know if it's something that we can acquire to see why the commercial vendor program will not be able to fulfill that. And that's something that also as a potential area, a gap, if we can work that out as well.
Right. And I think, we need to understand and sympathize with that concern from NCI. We need to respect and help them achieve their responsibilities as an IND holder and their responsibilities and obligations to the FDA. So I think it's understandable that they need to implement the system. But again, it's that question of how do we actually operationalize this and not have duplicative effort or create opportunities for error and discrepancies. And then the questions come up if you do have the FDA on site, what is considered source documentation? Is our typical process in our accountability systems that we use day to day, is that the source documentation that we would provide to the FDA, or is it this new system in Aurora? So I think it raises a lot of questions. So ultimately I agree and understand with the need for the system, but again, how do we actually use this day to day, and how do we make everybody's lives easier and be able to accomplish everybody's goals?
And I know one of the concern raised has to do with the requirement for registration. And from the reply that we received from the NCI SWOG is they said that they have modified it, so not everybody has to be registered. And also the registration may be more simple for people who are not like a manager or supervisory level of position. Again, we have to find out exactly how the setup is going to be as well. And furthermore, I remember they also come back and say, oh, the phase 2, when we roll out, is not going to be mandatory. So, which is interesting to me, what is the grace period for it to become mandatory? If this Aurora intent is to fulfill a FDA requirement, if it's not mandatory, then does it mean that whatever system people are using is fulfilling? And those are some of the questions that it seems like we continue to be waiting for a more specific answer or information as well. So anyhow, I don't know anybody else has additional concerns that we did not touch on.
I just thought of this one, because I think in the past, I remember that we handle NCI or alliance studies that the drug is not come from NCI. So it could be just ordered from a drug supplier. So those, I don't know if it's gonna go on this Aurora system. It might not, because in the past, it wasn't considered part of the NCI CTEP drug. So that will be kind of like an outlier again, because even though if we are able to separate the federal study using Aurora and our own commercial system for the non-NCI studies, but then those gray area with those drugs will be kind of outlier, then will again create more confusion. So that's kind of one thing that I forgot to mention.
Who else in this audience are practicing pharmacists? I know the members, but I do see, are you guys all from industry? Okay. No, no, I love pharmacists from industry because that's what we need to do. We expand the horizon, right, of our profession. No, don't apologize. No need to apologize. Yes. It used to make you do that, but don't do that.
I still think it would be fun to help in the way possible. I mean, I think that's why we're here.
Yes.
My name is Tina. I'm from Kaiser, Northern California, and we are unfortunately still on paper, and we were thinking about going to one of the vendors for EDARFs, but we kind of halted on our process because of this whole Aurora rollout. And I'm actually wondering, as we're talking about it, if one of the concerns is with the NCI is that, you know, the CTEP IDs, and like, how do you really make sure that someone has an active ID? Because from what I understand right now in the Aurora system, if your ID is not active, then you can't log on to order. But I'm assuming with these vendors, unfortunately, like I said, Kaiser isn't using it. There's no real way to guard that. Like, you could probably still go on, document on the DARF. And so if the FDA is auditing that, they could be like, well, this person's CTEP ID was not active. So maybe we can try to reach out to the vendors to see if there's a way that they can create a process to say that only people who have active CTEP IDs can have access.
So who does anybody audit to make sure the CTEP ID are current for, like, within the institution?
Audit.
So the CTEP IDs come into place when we have to have a plan in place to make sure that if we're talking about the CTEP ID for the provider, that it's active before we dispense. There's a different process that we have to have in place. And then whenever we get audited, we need to have an SOP in place that we have some kind of system that we go and check if the CTAP for that provider is active. And as far as ours, like the ordering, if we're talking about ordering, like not physician, but the ordering pharmacist or pharmacy staff, that's gonna be like based on the ID me and then the registration. When we currently we use an EDARF system, we don't have, you just have the CTAP number of the provider. There is there's nothing mandating that it needs to be active, not active, because that number does not change.
Right.
So I don't see that's gonna be an issue.
Is this the same as you go on the NCI site and you register as a non-physician investigator?
Yeah.
Is it different? Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
Add to that. So for currently, before the phase 2 rolled out, for sites that using either EDARF or paper DARF for dispensing is not required to be an NCI registered pharmacist. There's no
Right.
really requirement. Only requirement is for the prescriber to be CTAP registered. However, when it roll out to phase 2 for the Aurora, that will change everything because anybody, only the people registered for the CTAP has the status can access to Aurora.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how the change comes in. And that's also kind of one of the concern for probably a lot of sites when you have people like or pharmacists in all different pharmacies, satellite pharmacy, basically, if they want to document or dispense any drug from the EDAF, have any transaction, those people have to register through the CTAP registry, NCI status. So I
But-
think that was a
yeah.
major difference.
If I understand that
Mhm.
correctly, I think that's from the NCI response to us, to SWOG. That's where they're saying that they may modify that and only expect certain individual within each site to be registered, but not, I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
See, this is the part that I don't have the hands-on and the intricate knowledge of that, and that's why I have to take over for that. So, but that is what they are saying. So I don't know, but again, this is, I mean, if you hear where this conversation has been going, is that a lot of seemingly unknown and non-specific information provided. And so I think that, I mean, that's the easiest way to raise fear in people when you are, particularly when you are putting forth a new program. And Stephen, you're reading my mind. I was going to say, how does it work in the VA system? Can you
Well,
share?
the first thing that'll be a problem for the VA is that we don't know whether it's FedRAMP certified. So theoretically, everything in the federal government and NCI being part of that, it's supposed to be FedRAMP certified. So we don't know if it's gonna be okay for VA to use at all. And again, because we don't know a lot of the detail about what's going into phase 2. My question is, anybody alpha or beta testing this in the field? I mean, is this one of those things where they're just gonna,
I thought there was some beta sites. If I am correct, that's at some point, but
Right.
not anybody here.
yeah, because that's just will kind of inform the field better. And maybe NCI needs to be really pressed on that they need to pick, some good sites that know what they're doing so they can identify the problems. I mean, we did that in VA for a large cooperative trial where they were just going to push this thing out. And we said, no, we think we need to like maybe work through the process with a single site or two first. Because it's just going to be fear otherwise.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if my memory served me correctly, I believe during one of the calls, not with NCI, I believe somebody said that there were beta site used, but even the beta site was expressing concern.
That's a huge
But again,
concern right
it's-
there,
But
right?
again, this is secondhand information. It's not something that I was directly informed, but I was just thinking, I believe that's what I heard, so.
Yeah, and the last thing, I'd be concerned about like only one person registered at a site to put information in that, because I think if all the sponsors I deal with, we have a delegation of authority log that just like drives you nuts on a daily basis of how many times you have to sign and re-sign and do all this other. So I don't know if they're being FDA audited, how they get away with that. Because I think that's kind of a non-starter from the FDA perspective. You have to have some, if you're interacting and doing a transaction, dispensing, preparing something, you got to be on the study somehow.
Mhm.
I think that's an important point because if they're only allowing one person to register to have access to log into the Aurora DARF, then it's not going to be the person actually doing that, the dispensing. It should be the person doing the dispensing who's like actually, logging in out. So
When I was reading that feedback, they didn't say one person, but they were, I think because the concern raised was everybody that can potentially be involved in the dispensing has to be registered. They are just saying that they're not going to require everybody. But they didn't tell us who they would expect. That was kind of and that's what I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I think that's what I hear from all the other professional organization, people that I corresponded with in the last week, that they said the response back was kind of vague. So yes, they kind of lower the level of anxiety a little bit, but not completely, because there's still a lot of unknown and non-specific information being filtered back also. So. But I agree. I mean, it still can create problem even when you're relaxing in that way, right? So, yeah.
We have a question in the chat from Rebecca, who posed the question, if any sites had issues with non-pharmacy staff accessing Aurora. And then also posing the question of the idea of what if we allow non-pharmacy research team members such as CRCs or research nurses to be allowed to access Aurora.
So at Kaiser Northern California, we have an enrollment desk, which has two staff members that are not pharmacists who actually do most of our initial orders before Aurora was like, well, actually, I'm pausing because I now know the patient-specific supplies you have to order. It's not automatic anymore through Aurora. That was a change. So yes, we have these two non-pharmacists who access it. They're the only two that have access, and they basically help us with the initial orders for all our enrollment patients. It's a lot easier because we have how we're set up is that we have our central site in Vallejo, and then we have all our satellite sites all across Northern California. So it's just a lot easier for the enrollment desk versus the site pharmacist to do the initial order when they're enrolling the patient.
We do use non-pharmacists, but we have pharmacy technicians that are actually doing it. So they are part of the pharmacy team, but I don't think the requirement that you don't have to be a pharmacist, you can be a pharmacy technician and still be registered to order drugs.
But then if that is continued, then they will register, right? Technically, if when the two.
I don't know how it's gonna work out once the order that's another.
They didn't say whether it has
yeah.
to be pharmacist, right? Because there are sites that don't have pharmacists.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't think that it will require to be a pharmacy staff, because a lot of site actually the physician's office, they order drugs and they manage the drugs. So I don't think that the Aurora access has to be any pharmacist. I know that ordering they have to be on the designee, the NCI designee list. So whoever in your institution is in charge of that has to grant or put that person on the designee list in order to be able to get the access. Again, with phase 2, we don't really know how it's gonna be.
Other questions?
All right. I mean, for me, I apologize because I am not a hands-on pharmacist anymore. Actually, I'm semi-retired. So, so consequence to that, I mean, my understanding, interpretation of all this occurrence, but I'm opening my ears to really learn from all of you of the insight of on the very like hands-on level. What are some of the concerns? But pulling myself back, when I look at this whole process, my concern is, first of all, the communication needs to be improved, really to get people to understand what is this all about. And now my understanding is there are some training links that you can go to. And obviously, many of you are nodding your head. I presume you have gone through those. And it's not helping you because you are also still asking questions, right?
Sorry, I have a question again. So for this training, that you actually perfect segue, because I was thinking about it, was that I did read an email saying that they were going to have this training be required. But as of right now, it's not like they're logging their training in order to limit your access. So I was just wondering how sites are trying to keep track of this training, how are you going to implement it? Because right now, people who had access to OAOP technically already automatically have access to Aurora, but then later on, if the PMB does require it, like how would you keep track and limit your pharmacists from accessing Aurora if they never did the class training at all?
So it's very interesting because, to be honest with you, the communication from NCI, for example, to SWOG regarding Aurora is not through any one of us here. I think usually that I learn about those through emails that I receive from the operation office or in my communication with the operation office. And so there's a whole page that was shared with all this training. So that's another interesting aspect of that, of the communication pathway also. And I think to be honest with you, the second thing, and actually I share with many of the people that I work with more closely, is my top priority when I'm watching all this is the duplication of the data entry. I mean, in conducting clinical trial, what we strive for is collecting good data, accurate data. And we try to minimize errors, right? And that's why we do audits also, even for everything as we conducting clinical trial. But to me, I see that this, the way that this is all set up and designed is almost asking people to make error. And we all know that duplication of data entry is never clean. And usually when that occurs is most people will have to take care of things that are higher priority, immediate action, etc. And then they will go back at the end of the day to catch up with all the data entry stuff, right? I was a pharmacist once, so this is based on my own working habit also. So I can just see that at the end of the day, and I've also been talking to people that handle a high volume of investigational drugs, such as MD Anderson, and also from Andrew, for the volume that they have to do. If they do all those at the end of the day, not only talking about just the hour or the workload, but also is the clarity of your brain function at that time to be able to conduct your work at that high. And besides, all this is very detail oriented. So I think that's for me, when I'm hearing all this, my first alarm goes off is, whoa, what about minimizing error? And so, yeah, just to kind of share my thought of that also.
And I agree that our first priority is to understand the scope of Aurora and what the expectations will be, but I think we should also put on the back burner, what will the audit expectations be, and can this group help to manage or work with like the SWOG audit team to help develop that checklist so that those auditors know what to look for and know what to ask when they come to pharmacy, so we can be all on the same page. So again, knowing what is the source documentation, or how do we document that training of our staff? So again, what will the auditors ask for, and how do we reproduce that? So once we know what the expectations are, I think we could also regroup and help
Yeah.
shape that conversation as well.
Yeah, and actually Rivka, I'm going to acknowledge because Rivka has been the key person to work with the Operation Office audit team to put together a checklist. And this has been done for a few years now. Rivka, you can just chime in if I'm wrong in my information sharing. So, and I agree with you. I mean, again, then we need to go back and revisit. Should there's no change in, when we find out more about what Aurora is about also. And Safri, yeah.
I think what I expect will happen with Aurora is that we're gonna see a lot of missed entries and late entries. And unfortunately, this is one of the things that when we get audited by NCI, that's what they look for. So just from like a workflow type of thing, we already have Epic orders coming through Epic. We already have to do Epic, then go do whether your system is Vestigo or NCU, log the drug in that system as well. And then now you're adding a third system to use. It's really hard to fit that into a normal workflow in a busy pharmacy.
And Aurora is only selective, right? For certain protocols, certain
so
drugs.
you
that
have to
do.
remember
Yeah.
that, it's only for, I don't know if it's going to be just PMB provided. I think it's just going to be PMB provided drugs. So even if you know that this is an alliance, trial or
Yeah.
NCI trial, you have to have a system in place to know, but the drug is provided through biologics or McKesson, so it doesn't apply. I mean, it's a lot of, there's like a lot of variables.
Practical question. I'm just curious. So for the ID me, because usually when you log on, then you have the two factor authentications. I know I usually use the text for the code. But a lot of pharmacy actually in the basement or IV room that you cannot get the code. So I don't know if anybody has any like experience something different, because I know there are two, I forgot like what is that second option, the text and then the second option to receive that code. But I think it's
Email.
yeah, I do text too. I'm like, it's like, so there's a phone option. If you're in a
But
clean
isn't the phone
room, you
option
cannot
is
touch
text?
things and like you cannot like access. So that actually I just came to my head. I was like, oh, how do
But
you
the
do
phone
that?
option still won't work because you have no.
Yeah, you might not have a
Yeah.
phone or you should not touch things. And you're in a
Right.
clean room preparing or like, getting your drugs and signing out something. I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there. It's just like thought of it.
So at Kaiser, we do have computers in the clean room for, like dispense, prep, check, and beacon, but we have Teams, and then on Teams we can get phone numbers on Teams. And I did call ID me and they confirmed that multiple staff members can use the same phone number to get their codes. And so they can call that team number to get the code for that. Yeah, because we had a whole HR issue too about using personal phones for work. And so we, even though they want to choose to use their own phones, they can, but we tell them that they should use the Teams number if they need to, or their landline.
I hear about the access, internet access or whatever, that getting phone calls at a certain area of the pharmacy also from one of the calls that I was on regarding that. That was the same concern raised as well. All right. Is there any other comments or questions regarding this? Every time when this is going to be on our agenda for a while, I'm certain, but it's always creating a very dynamic discussion. But I think now we are maturing to a stage. As I mentioned, the action plan from here is now that I've collected all the document that I need. My plan is to organize a Zoom call with the multiple groups and to discuss this and talk about what is the next course of action. Actually, Dr. Blanke has been very generous to offer his continuing support if we need him to support us in terms of continuing the communication with NCI. Dr. Mooney at NCI is involved already in this email correspondence. So the medical side is aware of that. And so hopefully with multiple parties involved, we'll be able to move forward to seek for a solution. Of course, if you're tracking all this concern raised and discussion, a lot has to do with the lack of communication. Classic, right? The typical, always, most of the issue that occur, not just NCI, but anywhere else, is oftentimes is the clear communication. And I think at this point, one of the things also that we keep on hearing is the vendors telling us that they can't get NCI to communicate. And we hear the same thing from NCI that they can't get the commercial vendor to communicate. So as I jokingly tell somebody, let's be the matchmaker and see if we can put them and start talking to each other. And that will be my goal to do that. I think usually when you put people in the same room, it can be more productive also. And so we're hoping that that will be the case. But of course, this is not just a SWOG issue. So consequence to that, my intention is to work with all the people that are expressing concern and all the different organizations to have one unity voice from pharmacy. And so hopefully that will allow us to be able to drive for more effective process and outcome also. So I will absolutely continue to keep all of you updated as we move forward as well. But thank you very much for everybody's contribution. Every time we have the discussion, I learn a lot from that also. And again, I also wanted to say that thank you for being understanding for my lack of knowledge and allow me to tap into your brain to help me to understand this process and be able to conduct a more effective communication also. And I just wanted to thank you for that. Okay, so let's move on to the next item. So this is a new item that I started. It used to be, I was asked by some members that it seems like you are doing a lot of things on the side that we are not aware of. And it's true, I always receive a lot of emails from secret centers, right? From the operation office, Crystal. And so I'm just teasing you. So consequence to that, I realized that, oh, actually, you know, a lot of the questions that I receive from the investigator, from a lot of the site or from the operation office, oftentimes I just kind of take care of it instead of like triaging out to the pharmacist liaison or other members. Part of the reason for that is also because I figure I'm no longer working full time. I have a little bit more time, so I might as well just take care of it instead of burdening. And I also track the workload for Andrew in the drug information area as well. So consequence to that, and I love, not that I love drug information, but I love to look up information and problem solve. And then because I always learn something new, right? So I figure instead of saying that it's a report from the chair, I should make it like a group-wide item also. And so that's why I invented this. And again, if you have recommendation to change the naming of this, feel free to let me know. So I call it the intellectual challenging DI inquiries because some of the DI inquiries are very routine and we probably hear that all the time. On a daily basis, but I usually select out a few that I thought it may be unique because when I receive it, it is a little bit more challenging, and then or I recognize that, oh yeah, that's not something that would routinely think it through or process it when we are processing like an order or something like that, or reading a protocol. So I just hand selected a few to share with you. And one of those, actually, Andrew, is your baby, the second one. So I hope you remember. Okay. So the first one is actually from some of the things that I have done through reviewing protocols. the thing is that sometimes we are, as I mentioned, drug interaction seems to be area that is not heavily reviewed by other professionals when we review protocols. And as pharmacists, since we are being educated more in the area of pharmacology, so to me, because this is a high risk area also, as I mentioned before, particularly with the use of oral agent, so I usually pay a lot more special attention. So recently, interestingly, there was a protocol that came through, and is using a drug that has polysorbate 80 as a vehicle that they use in the formulation. And the drug package insert actually identify that as a contraindication if a patient is allergic to polysorbate 80 as a contraindication, they should not receive the drug. When I review the protocol, I do not see that listed as an exclusion criteria. And I think that is critical. Not only for safety of the patient, but it's also for liability reason as well. So I brought that up, and particularly for this particular protocol, they're also looking at one of the stratification factor is if the patient have previously received docetaxel. And some of you may recognize that docetaxel also used polysorbate 80 as a formulation vehicle. So I actually brought that up to the PI as we were going through the discussion for the protocol review. And interestingly, they were all kind of like, they didn't realize. So the lesson that I learned out of this is oftentimes when we look for drug interaction, we're always thinking of the active ingredient of the drug. But I also wanted to just kind of bring it to your attention that as we're thinking about drug interaction, also try to think about all the other ingredient that may be in the formulation that can create issue also. So, and not that I'm asking you that or expecting that people should know, because I don't know all the ingredient, but we always go and look it up to find out what else is in the drug formulation also. And this come up to be, I mean, I don't think this is common, but certainly we really need to be aware of that. The other one came through is interestingly is again from an oral chemotherapy drugs. Actually, it's not a chemotherapy, it's an immunotherapeutic agent and is used in the head and neck population. And actually, the question came from asking the use of thickening agent to help patient to facilitate for their swallowing. So there was a lot of question came through our discussion also. So first of all is, of course, we want to make sure that there's no drug interaction between the thickening agent and the oral chemo. And so, so I dig through some of the, I have no idea. And I never learned that in pharmacy school. And I have no idea what is a thickening agent to begin with. So, and it never come out as part of what I encountered during my practice years. So I went and looked up, first of all, I need to find out what a thickening agent. And then I also find out that depends on the country that you practice in, they may use different type of thickening agents also. And in addition to that, there was not a lot of information, obviously. Now, of course, whenever we're protocol, we do have representative from the company that manufacture the drug. So I was hoping I can punt it back. And they have the answer, but of course it came back empty because they said, we don't know. But to me, I said, well, we need to help, right? We need to help so that we don't exclude a patient if thickening agent is all the patient needs to help them swallow the drug. So at the end, I actually find an article from University of Queensland. So it looks like this particular faculty, it is specialized in studying about thickening agent and nutrition and all this kind of area. So, and then and it has a very nice review article. So apparently there's a way to classify drugs. They call it a BMS classification, and it's based on two factors, which has to do with permeability and solubility. So it's a 2x2 factor of a combination of low and high. And then they classify as 1 to 4. And so the thickening agent will be the compatibility of that will be depending on the classification of the drug. So so I learned that the drug was a class 2, and I'm not going to disclose because we always tell students don't use that to look for drug information, but I did. Google, of course. So, and then in this particular article, they specifically inform us of which class of the drug is okay to use the thickening agent. That was one of the most challenging questions that I received, I would say, in the last few months. And I learned so much out of that. However, of course, something else to think about to follow up was I have to make sure that they know you can use the thickening agent, but you don't crush the tablet, because that is an oral chemo handling safety issue. And particularly this drug is being given daily. So that means that the administration will be at home. So therefore I said, you do not touch this drug. The drug itself can be crushed because I also look into the pharmacology and the composition of it. So it looks like it can be crushed if it's not a chemo drug, but since this is. And of course, the next question is also, well, I mean, this is kind of like a targeted agent. So is it truly hazardous? So I did look it up, and no, it doesn't cause carcinogenicity and things like that. They have animal data on that. However, they do see teratogenicity. And because this is being done at home, then I would still recommend not to crush the drug because of the potential for cross-contamination of the environment. So that was my very strong no, do not crush the drug. And then I said, if we really need to do that, perhaps you need to have the pharmacy do that in a protected environment. But then I said, with that, you do have to make sure that we have stability data, because you cannot be going to the pharmacy for every dose, right? So apparently the decision made by the research team was just to inform that patient must be able to swallow, but they can use the thickening agent to facilitate the swallowing, but they cannot crush the oral drugs. So that was kind of the final decision from the protocol. So I thought that was an interesting one. I don't know if anybody else has experience or receive this kind of scenario, and if you have managed it differently. I just wanted to open up the platform for sharing. Don't make me feel better, and don't say anything because I said that I never have encountered this before. I guess not. Okay, so good. So Angie, you want to take the next one?
Sure. So we completed a drug section and then got a question back from the office, kind of questioning the metabolism and elimination of a MAB. And, you know, we always like to have very clear information in the PK section, you know, half-life, absorption, and all those things that we like have definite answers. But I think for metabolism, we just kind of said generically, it's eliminated by normal protein degradation pathways. So it really wasn't very specific. So we're just asked to do a double check to make sure if there's any additional information. And you know, just kind of spot checking a handful of different therapeutic MABs that eliminate that metabolism of a therapeutic MAB isn't really typically described in a package insert. Like they're not doing those radio labeled studies to see exactly how that protein is being degraded. And then we did a quick literature search and found some review articles about the PK of MABs, and it really is that proteins are just degraded in hydrolysis and catabolism. So unfortunately, in that situation, we couldn't provide more explicit detail for that drug. I guess just like an important caveat to keep in mind for other sections is if you have that antibody drug conjugate, then we do need to be mindful of how that drug component is being metabolized, because that typically is characterized. But again, for that MAB, it's just eaten up or disappears.
Well, the good news is I think we train people enough for them to look for, is it eliminated through the kidney or the liver, or you know, that's what they were looking for when they started the question, right? So I was like, whoa, that's good that they're asking that. The third one is a simple one. So this is coming from, actually, I believe it came from the stats office because there was a question raised from a site because they said, oh, we have a different storage temperature definition in our institutional policy, and it's not the same as the protocol. And they were asking SWOG to review it. And I think it went to the stats office. And so stats went to NCI and Matt Borrow and said that we don't do that. And then, of course, then I become the next person. And so, but the interesting thing is when I review it, it wasn't like the range is out of range. It's just that we as SWOG has a broader range to define room temperature versus to the institutional guideline, they're more strict. So I basically just told them, that's fine. You can use our institutional guideline because you are within that wider range of SWOG. But I do kind of ask the communication to specify that please ask the site that in the event that the drug storage do become out of range, but if it's still within the range of SWOG, please don't dispose the drug. It's still good, so that we don't create unnecessary drug wastage. But this is just kind of something that I learned of to get people to think about all those issues, and as part of what our duty is to minimize drug wastage is always a big area that I am, because those drugs are expensive. So yeah, so this is just something to be mindful of, and take a look at that and see what you can do if you ever be asked for something. And sometimes we don't know if the background of the person who's requesting. So it did came from a pharmacist, but we don't know if maybe they are just like just a new practitioner. So those kind of response also will help for all of us to grow professionally as well. So, so I think those are the selected items. I don't know if anybody else has a interesting, intellectual, challenging questions that came up. It doesn't have to come from SWOG, or it's just maybe at your site that you feel that it will be beneficial to share and enrich all of us. All right, then I'm going to move on to to the next item. Sorry, too fast. So this one is the Beacon standardized order set. So Jane Rogers from MD Anderson has been the person who was instrumental in bringing this to the committee, because she is a very active member in the GI committee also. But my most recent conversation with her, it appears that it's not moving forward. Now, however, I did hear something about the myeloma group is thinking about setting up some Beacon standardized order. But with that said, I actually had some interesting information has to do with the APP thing, that when the NCI representative in the task force phone call was asking me how what we need to do to bring more pharmacists into the APP arena. At the same time, she also informed me that there's actually an NCORP group that is looking for pharmacists to bring in to set up informatics area, including creating Beacon order set, and as well as perhaps adding on additional responsibility. It wasn't clear to me is what if they were actually looking to employ someone. But then subsequently, I find out that they are an ECOG Akron site. So for respectful reason, I actually make connected with the pharmacy committee chair at ECOG. And then I asked her if there's any interested pharmacists or anybody that she feels is appropriate to maybe initiate the conversation, because this is for my effort to try to facilitate more interaction between pharmacists and the site as well, irrelevant of which group we're talking about. So actually, I was successful. I had to give you an update because this again occurred 2 days ago. So I sent the email yesterday to the chair, and I got all the response and all the connections are done because ECOG chief actually sent back to me 2 pharmacists. And so I connected the pharmacist with the NCI. And so the NCI is now going to connect that pharmacist with the NCO group. And so to allow them to formulate. And then I received a follow-up email. Apparently this NCO group will also soon be joining SWOG. So it's quite interesting with that. But that is the Beacon standardized order set. I do want to find out, I know that a lot of you are working on setting up Beacon standard order set, right? Is this both for clinical trials as well as for non-trial patients? Crystal, do you know if a lot of the, I mean, I think part of what I should ask is, do we have a lot of protocols that have, or are we just letting the site set up the Beacon order set?
I mean, in general, it's a very site-specific item. And so we allow sites to do what they do at their site. In some studies, we do have sites that provide us an example of their Beacon build, and we can post it to help with that. I assume this is really similar to an electronic medical record, or is it just the pharmacy piece of?
It's the pharmacy piece, right? The key, the old. Go ahead.
Okay, I mean, the only thing that we've really been working with the NCI and CTSU is the EMRs, which is now, as of March, standard for all studies that are going to be active. They are working on doing some retrospective ones, and they do have an entire treatment plan, but it also includes all the visits as well.
So, yeah, but I mean, for you guys at the site, do you think it can be helpful if the disease committee, when they are developing the protocol, to create a template with the Beacon order set just as a start? Of course, the site can adjust it according to something unique to their site, right? Do you think that's helpful?
That would be great. That would cut a lot of time, like, they all have to start.
However, I think each site, might have different, because Beacon is part of the Epic module. So I think different site may have different customization with their system. So I don't know if there's really like standard that every site can adopt. And also usually in my site, for the pharmacist involvement is the content extraction and submission. So we create the content and then submit to the IT people to build the Beacon. So I think that I would foresee this is more like a content, development. So a form or something that you put in all the different sections, nursing order, lab, pre-med, supportive med, and that things like that in that order. And then submit to the IT. So, and then whatever site has different, it depends on your treatment plan.
Right.
Some sites choose not to include lab, for example, and some sites choose not to include nursing order. And so then it could be that's how I kind of see it. It might be possible. It would not be really one size fits all, that kind of.
No.
So the EMR does include a lot of the pre-meds as well.
But you can adjust, right? It's just creating the content, and then the site can select how they set up their Beacon but at least the content is there, and that they should be accurate, right?
It would still be helpful, like
Yeah.
if someone creates like the initial like form and has like already like the pre-meds, a lot of times
Mhm.
they're not listed in the protocol, so we have to actually look at the drug itself and see, is it genetic, is it like what the degree and what kind of pre-meds we can put in. We have to look at the
Parameters, yeah, the parameters.
usually talks about, exactly, the parameters are a big one. A lot of times they're not spelled out in the protocol, and sometimes you have to get a list under like grading, and that's just try to find.
Usually we
Mm.
modify, we extract it from the dose modifications
Yes.
section to kind of create the treatment parameter. And then you sort of pick and choose what is the relevant, that value or whatever, that, parameter that you want to improve.
And then
another
nursing
problem-
communications, if there's like the wait times,
Mhm.
observation periods, monitoring. There's some, like, if it is like an initial order set out there, then we can customize it to, for example, what our preferred treatment would be, like, we can speak it, and definitely helpful to have.
And another problem with the study calendar, sometimes depending on how we write the calendar section, like we do it in weeks versus cycles. So then we have to update our beacon builds, like in terminology of the lab parameters to kind of fit the calendar, because our nurses look at it. And our pharmacists are like in tune with the cycles, because that's how the beacon is built. So I also think it would help the protocol builders realize that they might need to change the study calendar format for beacon, but.
Crystal, do you think that's a feasible thing for us to to look at?
I think it's definitely worth looking at.
Yeah.
I mean, the calendar is a whole nother item, but so in my experience with a site providing an example beacon build, it's about 3 months after activation because of everything, the process that you've already alluded to. And so I would so I think that there is a process and we can think that through. I would like to start with the EMR and then take that and expand upon it to include some of the other items that you just said. So it's a possibility, but I think what you'll want is a draft template form of what you're looking for and what would be useful for sites as part of that, and something to talk about and consider.
I'm just going to jump in with comments from the chat. Rebecca is saying, as a former Beacon pharmacist protocol builder, having a standard Beacon protocol set from NCI would be tremendously helpful and may shorten the time to open a study. And then just reiterating that IT teams at most institutions should welcome this as it's a very helpful starting point. And then Isabel is saying that she agrees with having a minimum content template, such as including required lab parameters, treatment sections with infusion times, pre-meds, and oral instructions, all as applicable. And also just a reminder, if you're speaking, please come up to a microphone so that our Zoom friends can hear.
So one of the things that I would consider is, because it sounds like this would be better utilized from the NCI as an effort from them to kind of take a look with the group that's doing the EMRs, if there's additional fields that could be included on that form, because I already think it's pretty extensive in what you're looking for, and maybe starting there.
How are these in the current state? How are these documents being transmitted?
It's an Excel document. So CTSU, once the study is approved, CTEP approval on hold, so it's going to be going to the CIRB. They begin that build. Right now, I'm the current person that reviews those, and so happy to work with you on that. And so, that's kind of their current status. They look at it from a Medicare standpoint, looking at exactly what's in the protocol. They split it up from screening to treatment to follow-up. And it includes a lot of the information that you're already talking about.
And that gets posted to the CTSU website.
It does.
So if we create a template to share with all the investigative sites for them to adjust, wouldn't that also mean that whatever the content in the template will have to go through the ILB also.
No, it wouldn't go through the IRB. It would just be some information that we post to the CTSU website as an educational material or references.
So it's something to think about. I know some of you are experts in Beacon. So of course, I mean, of this nature, I think every time when I hear Beacon, the next thing I hear is pharmacists, right? I think most of the time, the beacons are built by the pharmacists, even in practice. And so most likely this will come back to this committee. So if we want to think about this, I would ask people, maybe if you're interested, send me an email, and then I will put a group together, and perhaps, you know, somebody who knows Beacon more. Definitely, anybody in this room probably know Beacon more than I do, can work on this, and maybe I can take it, we can take it to the QI as a proposal and see what the leadership thinks about that also, and then we can take it from there. I think it's, again, a service, but as we mentioned, it may potentially accelerate an activation of a protocol faster. If we can do that, that's part of why we're here, right? Is to support the quality of the group also. So Stephen.
Yeah, I know most of the world's on Epic, but not all the world's on Epic. And the VA is actually going for probably worse, but not better. Going with Cerner Multum. So, and the VA is going to be the first that uses their research side, which they use something called power trials. So I would be an advocate of a template more than like something that should just try to, you know, force into Epic or however that world works, because I have no idea. But and there's a huge healthcare system within Salt Lake City or within Utah and Colorado that also uses Cerner. So I don't think limiting this to Epic is, you know, I think it can be kind of Epic forward, but but maybe not completely, so it can be, you know, utilized by other systems out there.
So I think we mentioned before that I think I foresee it as more like a template, not because I'm not familiar with other system. I don't know how it's laid out, but what I'm thinking is even like as a paper order, I'm thinking just the key components of it, like lab parameter, hydration, or specific vital sign instruction, things like that. But one thing that I'm kind of wanted to everybody to think about is how do we upkeep the maintenance of the order template? Because I think normally protocol has a lot of amendments, and the order set is one of the pieces that potentially constantly have update and changes. So if we create a template for a new study in the beginning, and since it's attached to that protocol, we also providing the maintenance of it. So that's kind of something to think about. If we go in that directions, who is going to be responsible? Is the site going to be responsible? Is SWOG going to be responsible? But if we post it or link it to that particular study, I feel like then we have to take care of the upkeep of it.
Yeah, I mean, my vision of this will be, this is not necessarily a pharmaceutical science committee project. I mean, it will be our project to put it together. But I think the presentation of that is more with the protocol, with the whole research team, not from the PharmSci committee itself. And regarding the revision and update, true, because there's oftentimes, from my own experiences, the possibility of people forgetting to inform us of protocol revision and things like that may not occur. So therefore, I think it will be safer to have the operation office as for the maintenance of that, because some of the revision may not have to do with altering the treatment part. It may be just ordering some timeline for monitoring or things like that, right? So I think we can rely on the protocol coordinator. And if they feel the need to bring the farm side in to support in terms of looking at the specific content revision, then it can be done. Crystal, what do you think about in general that kind of arrangement?
I mean, I'm gonna push back. We've got way too much work already to do and trying to keep everything in line. Our biggest thing is the protocol and the consent. I still think this is more of a CTSU NCI effort.
Okay.
And so I'd really want to push it on them to do that type of upkeep, especially if we can get them to write it and make
Okay.
it more standard across all cooperative groups.
But we can help them do the startup
Mhm.
and then let them do that's fine. As long as there's somebody keeping it up and watching it, I'm.
I mean, yeah, we just don't have the expertise as well, and to recognize that. So I really want to take a look at the EMR and
Yeah.
kind of expand upon that to get you the information that you want.
Okay.
Could you explain in the current state how that document's being QA'd? Like, is it
Which one?
the EMR document that you mentioned that has?
So CTSU has an entire group dedicated to it. I don't know all their expertise that are included. But Larry is one of the main guys that kind of heads it all, and then they've got additional experts on it. Again, I'm part of the team, and I just QC it and make sure that it coincides with the protocol.
Joyce, you're on the CTSU, but the ILB, right?
Oh, yeah,
CILB, yeah. Does it have to do with this portion of it? But maybe if we add on the beacon, they may bring some pharmacists into the working group to do the QA. Maybe.
I mean, that's
But I
something we
mean, it
can-
doesn't hurt to explore and then
ask,
we're
yeah.
aware of the need. And if we bring it to their attention and perhaps they may think about need and modify their organization.
Yeah, I think it's good
Yeah.
to have a multidisciplinary approach to
Exactly.
our institution. We have to have the PI, the coordinators, the nurses and pharmacists all sign off. So having
Right.
all those eyes on it is important.
Yeah, our protocol team is not scientific. So I would
Yeah.
like us to stay out of that as much as possible.
I mean, I think we'll be happy to do that, except that we still need the alert system. And I am concerned that that may not occur. Yeah.
The alert system when something changes.
Yes.
So yeah, we haven't gotten that far with the EMR to really have a good understanding. It is CTSU's responsibility to update it with any protocol revisions, but
Right.
again, you're at least 2 to 3 months behind the actual revision being released.
But at least if they are doing that, maybe we can tap into them directly. Mhm. Thank you. All right, yes.
I'm just wondering, maybe our approach to this would be to start with drugs that are already FDA approved, that are in a lot of studies like the pembrolizumab, nivolumab, and I start out with that to see if we can create a standardized order set for those, because the PIs are already, released for those. It'd be even just having that to refer to would help with some of the protocol builds that we have to kind of give us a baseline to start and feedback from everyone, see how it looks like.
Yeah, I think this all started as at the GI committee, and it was the chair who was driving to create the beacon. And I believe there was a change of leadership, and that's why it didn't continue. But a few months ago, I was on a myeloma call, and I know that the protocol they were talking about and on the agenda item, the beacon setup was part of it. So that is where I start thinking about, maybe we should think about that and create some kind, and it's really helpful to the site also, because we just have such a diverse array of sites that resources are very different. So I think many of the sites can use this kind of resources also. So that's kind of what brought me to talk about this. But I do think that we need to explore and make sure that there's the disease committee feels the need. And maybe we start with a certain, I do know the chair of the myeloma group quite well, so I can contact him directly and see where things are, and maybe they can be the pilot also to start with. Mhm.
Can I have a suggestion, maybe from Steve's points, that because there's different system out there, maybe we can do a more general term instead of calling it
Oh,
beacon, maybe
sorry,
just
that's
like.
my ignorance, my apologies.
No, I think we've been calling it beacon because beacon is definitely one of the most, popular and most used, oncology treatment plan system. We can call it computerized, just the CPOE. So I think that will be more inclusive with all the other ones. And when we discuss and kind of talk about this topic, then we can definitely take into consideration with other system and make it very more like generic as a template.
I will do that, and I will change the gender. But thank you. See, this is the kind of education that I need. Also, thank you. All right, I know we are starting to run out of time, so I'm going to quickly just wrap up the meeting with, I don't think we have any digital engagement committee report. So this is just a review of the pharmacist liaison. You will see that there is a new committee added to it, which is the immunotherapeutics. And you also see that we have a primary liaison already. And you say, who is this person? Because Jordan is not a member yet, but his application is in process because he is one who directly work with the committee chair at Utah. And as soon as the committee chair actually reached out to me and asked for pharmacist liaison, the next day Jordan sent me an email and introduced himself. So of course I hold on to that opportunity and I started his application as a member already. And being that you all know that we have this preference is if we have a pharmacist that is directly working with either a very active investigator at their site, or if they're committee chair, those are the pharmacists that we usually loop them in as the primary or secondary. So that's the reason why Jordan's name is on there for that reason. I have sent out an email and I think most of you in here have received that email, is calling for anybody interested in as a secondary. Overwhelming, 3 people have expressed interest. I look at their background, etc. And in addition to that, most of all is because Jordan is brand new. And so I wanted to make sure that I pair him up with somebody who has been on the committee for a while. So most likely it will be Kimberly O'Donnell from UCSD being the secretary. And then for the other volunteer, I will of course seek other opportunities because as you can see, we have a need for other committees also. So with that, that's all. And then what I just shared with you also covers for this slide also. So with that, I think I concluded the agenda, but I also wanted to see if there's any last minute requests or suggestions or questions, etc. before I say, see you later. Yes.
Sorry, I was just a quick question of how our sites.
And I don't think you're a member also.
Oh,
so,
no, I was actually going to ask you later about that.
Oh.
I am interested. But my question is, how are sites dealing with the drug shortages right now because of a lot, especially with the head and neck studies with cisplatin and carboplatin? And are you guys halting enrollment or just one?
So at our sites, we have shortages of cisplatin, carboplatin, and 5-FU. Those are the major shortages that we're dealing with right now. For cisplatin, we have very, very strict restrictions on using. We do have some carboplatin in stock, but it's on allocation, so we're able to get it. So for those studies that need either cisplatin or carboplatin, we did not halt enrollments. We still enroll, but we can only enroll for carboplatin. For 5FU, we have, I don't know if everybody is, I know this is like some places out there having issues, some places don't. We have a very, very severe shortage of 5FU. So any study that uses 5FU, we are actually halting enrollments.
Oh, wow.
Which is,
I think our site has definitely also had shortages issues with the platinum. We still have some supply, but I think currently with all the NCI studies, SWOG and other consortium studies, I think we don't have any patient luckily actively on those drugs, but we already notify all the study teams. So we don't halt enrollment at this point, but they know that they have to check with pharmacy and make sure that we have supply for that patient. Because I think NCI already sent out a notice that we have to guarantee the entire treatment cycle, like 6 cycle, whatever number. So they will have to ensure that we can guarantee that have enough supply. And for even standard of care patient, we basically prioritize. We have to evaluate case by case basis. Definitely for curative intent, we'll have a, kind of like more in a higher priority than the other treatment. If they can have other options, but it is a problem. I mean, luckily 5FU for us is not as so much a problem, but the platinum.
What do you do at Michigan? Do we have anything from online of people? Okay. Yeah. I just learned that there is a drug shortage study going on. A physician in Hawaii told me about this, and he was surprised I didn't know. I said, oh no, I don't know a lot of things. So I don't know if this study has any relevance to address what is going on clinically.
I don't know much about it.
Oh, can you go?
I don't know much about it, but yes, one of the physicians in Hawaii actually did ask us to see if we were participating in it in Kaiser, Northern California. But
It's
we're
probably the
not.
same physician.
Yes, but we're not. So but I am aware of it. Yeah.
Put it in the chat.
Okay.
The URCC 18004 CD Understanding Drug Shortages as the study title.
Is that the study?
Yes,
Oh.
I expect the IRB identified. Right. URCC 18004 CD Understanding Drug Shortages.
Isabel. Thank you, Isabel, for sharing that. So, well, we're at 11:58. So I finished the meeting at least 2 minutes before. Any other questions or suggestions or? Okay, thank you very much for coming. And again, I still also want the pharmacists from the industry. I was just teasing you guys, but I honestly embrace all of you. I mean, pharmacists are pharmacists. We are all one unit, right? And so thank you again for attending, and thank you for some of very, very good discussions. And so I look forward to the next meeting, and I hope more people can attend in person. The next meeting, it will be in Chicago, and is October 11 to 14. So check your calendar and make yourself available. And I look forward to seeing you guys. Meanwhile, stay safe and stay well. Thank you.